Hey guys, welcome and thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. My guest today is a mega entrepreneur. He received his Bachelors of Science degree in agriculture economics from Cornell University and his MBA from Vanderbilt University. He serves on the board of the publicly traded cannabis investment firm Vencanna. He is the chairman of Taliera, a company he founded in 2006 to incubate and celebrate iconic brands, and is a senior advisor to STS Capital. He has founded and built multiple companies and brands, including National Wine and Spirits, which is now one of the largest distributors of beer, wine, spirits in the United States with over $1 billion in beverage sales. He has overseen more than $1.7 billion in M&A deals and financing publicly and privately for his companies and created hundreds of millions of dollars in value for his stockholders. He is the CEO of Vertical Wellness, a leading vertically integrated CBD brand company. Smoke Wallin, welcome and thank you so much for being part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel today, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Great having you, sir. Look, I mean, you got out of school, you started your business in background you have a really, 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 very, very, very unique background, but your background's in the hospitality sector. Tell us what interested you in that and how did you decide to pursue that field out of college?
Well, it was probably because I got jobs at hotels and restaurants, in high school, and then during Cornell, I got introduced to the hotel world, and I got great internships. So I got to live in Atlantic City and work at a casino one summer, and the Ritz-Carlton in Boston one summer, and just had a fun time. It was really a cool place to learn about hospitality and service, and it just was a natural. But when I got out of Cornell, I jumped into the other side, which is the brand side, and joined Seagram in their leadership training program, and then jumped over to the distributing business. And so most of my customers for many, many years were hotels and restaurants and bars and retail stores.
So you really kind of honed your skills distributing beverages around the country. That should have been enough, or could have been enough for a lot of other people. But what got you interested in the cannabis space?
Well, Montel, years ago, I helped a Marine launch a vodka called Heroes Vodka, which was a brand designed to give back to veterans. And as we did that, and we ended up putting it into Walmart and a bunch of rolled it out around the country. As I did that with Travis, his friend group was a lot of veterans, and I got to know these guys really well. And what I found out was a lot of them had come back from Afghanistan or Iraq and had lots of issues, PTSD and other challenges. And the VA was prescribing them this crazy cocktail of painkillers and antidepressants and sleep medicine and all these different medicines, which together made it, if you add alcohol to it, made it for a very toxic mix. So I learned during that time that a number of them were getting help through cannabis. And it was the first time that I had been exposed to the health and wellness side of it, as opposed to, the college years when it was more of the party side. And that really stuck in my head. So years later, when I sold my last whiskey and vodka business, my wife turned to me and said, we really need to look at cannabis before you do another liquor deal. And I was like, you know what, I really do need to look at that and see if it's time. And the rest is history. But that was 4 years ago now.
That's incredible. And I know you have continued your advocacy for veterans.
Yes, absolutely. We've got a bunch of veterans that work for us. My chief operating officer is a Marine, 13-year Marine, and we've hired extensively, and we continue to give back. They're one of our give back partners.
Well, I want to take a second of your time in this interview to tell you a little bit about a program that I've been working with and coordinating with over the course of the last now almost 10 years. But finally, they have literally broken through. It's a nonprofit that's called R&R that developed a protocol that's called RTM, which is now listed as evidentiary medicine and one of only 2 cures for PTSD on the planet. The program literally has a 90% efficaciousness rate, different than some of the other therapies that the VA has been using, and they've been using for years now, something called exposure therapy, which only has about a 35% efficaciousness rating. This one, 9 out of every 10 soldiers who go through this are literally cured. They remit every one of their symptoms of PTSD in as little as 5 treatments, 5 hours, without any medication at all. The average is about 12 hours. This is a protocol that I've literally been bouncing around the country with and talking to everybody and their mother, from the Senate to, Ken Fisher of Fisher House to, we've been working with the Disabled Veterans of America, AMVETS. We're literally right now trying to make the VA stop in its tracks and pay attention to this. So, I'm glad that there's somebody like you out there working on veterans issues also, but I want to let you know that that exists. If you want more information about it, I will definitely get it to you.
Definitely. That sounds fantastic. I'd love to learn more and share the message as well.
Yeah, what's so crazy is that, again, it is such a transformative protocol that, and I think you probably know this, it's the same reason why cannabis has been treated the way it is. Transformative breakthroughs in medicine and treatment in this country are always met with the most vehement and adamant resistance by the medical community. Not for any other reason other than the fact that it's going to take some money out of people's pockets. And, what's really kind of silly is that, the PTSD has become almost by itself a cottage industry in this world. The government has spent probably close to $2.5 billion in the last 5 years on PTSD. There's several universities who literally, are banking on $300 and $400 million worth of donations every single year to prop up protocols that don't work. And this is one that does work. So just want to let you know
That's
that.
great.
I'll definitely get you some information on it, because I think it's guys like you that put your money where your mouth is, and also put your heart where your mouth is, helping our veterans that we need. I'm a veteran, so I'm trying my best to make sure that we help these guys as much as we can, and especially even through cannabis. And we've now proven that cannabis is a gateway exit drug, not a gateway drug, an exit drug for opioid addictions, and also helps out the way it does when it comes to helping soldiers, helping everyone who suffers from PTSD.
Well, thank you for your service, Montel, and all the work you do on that cause. It's really important.
Absolutely, sir. Tell me a little bit about Vertical. Your company, what is it called? I'm sorry, I messed
Vertical
that up.
Wellness. Yeah.
Vertical Wellness. So tell me a little bit about Vertical Wellness.
So the story of Vertical Wellness is, I mentioned I was in the beverage industry. I spent about 6 months looking at cannabis in general, and, excuse me, and ended up coming out to California, investing in a company that had made some early investments in the medical cannabis space. And we put them all together, raised some capital, and started scaling it out as California went adult use legal in 2018. And early in 2018, I went out to Washington. I wanted to get a handle on how long the prohibition was going to last, what appetite Washington had to remove the federal prohibition. And I left there thinking, well, there's definitely not agreement yet. This was back in 2018, but there was a lot of support for hemp and bipartisan support. So I got back to California. I said, this industry it's going to help so many people, but it's going to be about brands. And the brands that emerge over time are going to be, I think, the big winners, and are going to give people comfort that they're safe and that they're well made, but also is going to create a lot of value for the people that create the brands. And as I looked at the landscape in the THC world, it's very fragmented. Every state has its own set of laws. It's very difficult to build a national brand today. But with hemp getting legal, our thought was, if we were to create brands using the cannabis plant, but hemp, which is low in THC, and we were to build national brands through traditional retail like Walmart and Walgreens, and hospitality like Marriott and Hyatt, we could build national brands that would be trusted by consumers, giving them value quickly, and then work our way back into the cannabis world. So that's really the secret behind Vertical Wellness. Is we're a brand company bringing health and wellness to the market, using legal hemp to do it, but we're very much in the game of how do we advance the overall cannabis effort and we think our brand portfolio is going to play a key role in that.
You know, I was recently speaking to a doctor. I don't know if you know who Dr. Tisler is. Do you know him, Dr. Tisler?
I don't know him.
Harvard-trained doctor. He runs an organization that is an association of doctors across the country who are finally starting to get with the program and understand the value of cannabis at its core. And recent conversation with him, and he echoed some of my thoughts that have been going on. When you brought up, going to California in 2018 and taking a look at the legalization standing, you take a look at the legalization of cannabis around the country. New Jersey, now New York, one of the biggest states jumping into this mix. It in some ways, and I don't say it to cast aspersions on our industry, but I think it's going to do our industry a disservice rather than a service, because as people focus in on recreational and adult use, they leave the patients on the battlefield. And unfortunately, it's going to take big. You're right. I think it's going to take big brands that are willing to start to spend the money. I mean, if we face it, I think most people who gravitate towards cannabis instead of alcohol are gravitating towards cannabis because they have an underlying medical issue, if they don't admit it or not. Those who use cannabis are using it to relax or to lessen anxiety, help them with their sleep. They don't consider themselves medical patients, but they're using it for a medical reason. Yet we as an industry are trying our best to just satisfy an adult use recreational category that really, at the end of the day, I'm not sure will be as sustainable as the idea of medical. And when you look at places like Israel, where, cannabis is considered almost a geriatric drug now, helping people to reduce the amount of pharmaceuticals that they're on. That means that, the largest population that they have in Israel, which is baby boomers, are some of the biggest consumers. Could be the same thing here in the United States, yet we I think in some ways are kind of missing the boat a little bit, where we're trying to figure, we're forgetting about the patient and trying to concentrate on this whole legal market and recreation and not meeting the needs of so many more who could be users.
Well, I think it's a really interesting point. And the way I look at it is this: there is obviously a recreational component that exists, and that could be as big as beer, wine, or spirits. But I think the health and wellness aspect of cannabis, the benefits of this plant, which in its core reduces inflammation, which is associated with so many of the ailments that we have as we age, is an incredible benefit, and is many times larger than the recreational space. So what you said is exactly the way I think about it. And I don't begrudge people having the recreational stuff. That's fine. If I put 10 guys in a room and I gave them unlimited whiskey, there might be a fight and someone might die. If I get the same 10 people in a room and I gave them unlimited cannabis, they might order a pizza, they might pull a muscle from laughing, and they might all fall asleep. So as a overall harm, and I'm not anti-alcohol, but there's a much less harm with this plant in a recreational sense. But I think we're barely scratching the surface on the health and wellness aspects. And some of that, Montel, is really, I think we've got to formalize a lot of studies. There's more and more coming out all the time, as you know. But that takes capital, and it takes time to do studies where you can actually make health claims around it. And so some of it is that it's difficult to make those claims until you have evidence that the government will agree on, and that takes more time than saying, hey, this is great cannabis, and it's got a high THC content. So
but I think part of that, I agree with you 100%. We do need to do more studies, but what we need to do, I think, as an industry, I just throw it out, is the fact that we spend so much time in the B2B mode, trying to ensure that, every one of our competitors are as successful as we are from a capitalistic standpoint, but we do a really piss poor job in the B2C mode. That means the B to consumer mode, educating the masses, making them aware, educating. When I say the masses, I'm not just talking about the consumer from the patient standpoint, but from the doctors, from the politician standpoint. I mean, quite often it seems to be, I'm so sick of hearing this statement from politicians. Oh, well, we need to get the research done. Stop.
Yeah.
If you Google cannabis and research, there are well over 23,000 published peer-reviewed articles out there right now. 23,000. I was talking to a doctor recently who said that if you look up in Google the same amount of published articles on alcohol is only 5,000, around 5,000, 6,000. There's 23,000 articles that have been published so far. And some of these longitudinal studies have been being done for the last 10, 15 years. There's a study that just came out a month and a half ago. That's been a 25-year-long study. So it's not like the research isn't there. We in the industry, I think, and when I say we, I'm not casting aspersions on you, but I'm just talking about the industry in general, is doing such a piss poor job in educating. The fact that we have a guy who's just elected president of the United States who still believes that cannabis is a gateway drug tells me how poor a job we've done in educating.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we educate the trade, and also how do we educate our consumers. And one of the things that I think it comes with building a brand is what is a brand? It's the promise of something. It's an expectation that if you buy a Coca-Cola, it's going to taste the same every time. It's building trust. And one of the challenges in building brands in the cannabis space is you can't make health claims, so you have to do it in other ways. One way that we're doing, and others have done similar things, but we've got a partnership that I put together with Kathy Ireland, who has been very active in health causes, women's health, children's health for a long time. She's got an incredible business where her brands are sold in lots of different sectors. And we did a deal with her. So we're launching Kathy Ireland Health and Wellness CBD Solutions. And the point of that is there's a large population of mainstream consumers who are very interested in replacing their pharmaceutical drugs, whether it's Advil or it's sleeping pills or it's anxiety, all the things that we know that this plant can be very helpful on. But they like to try something natural. They'd like to try cannabis and CBD, but they don't know who to trust. And the brands aren't big yet where you can say, oh, that's a brand that I know and trust and I believe in. So we look at our partnership with Kathy as a invitation to people that trust her to come into the space, to try these alternative medicines, and to really join us in this effort to expand the use of the plant. And I think we're getting a great reaction from the trade, and we'll see once we get it out with consumers, but I think it will be a good way to communicate and educate.
Absolutely. And I think, again, not only do you need there are a lot of celebrities out here right now that I've had a brand in market for, off and on for the last 10 years. I just signed another deal in New Jersey, and I'm going to probably be rolling out my CBD brand again across the country. But I've found that just the name alone, it's just like Snoop Dogg's product isn't the biggest selling product in the country. Why not? I mean, he's probably one of the most well-known cannabis, connoisseurs there is. But, you have to back that up with some factual data. And recently, there are so many new articles that have been published in the last year alone that talks about everything from, the fact that, again, cannabis is not the gateway drug that most of these politicians still glom onto when they make those statements. It's proven that in states where cannabis has, been dispensed medically, that most cannabis use among teenagers goes down.
Yeah,
opioid abuse goes down.
Montel, the gateway, as you know, is keeping it prohibited, making it illegal, and the gateway is you have to go buy it from a drug dealer who has every incentive to upgrade their sale and sell you something worse. That's the gateway. So you regulate it, you legalize it, and you have a clean, tested product, and you eliminate that middleman who's really interested in not your best health. So I think it's the opposite of a gateway drug.
Absolutely. And how has COVID impacted your business?
Well, it's been a challenging year for everyone, but I would say that when cannabis got deemed an essential product in most states, that really helped solidify the movement forward and momentum forward. And there was a moment when it looked like they might shut down all the operations, like they shut down lots of other businesses, but they deemed it essential. And for the most part, sales have been very strong throughout the country.
I think cannabis has proven to almost be recession-proof. As a matter of fact, most most of the dispensaries in this country are seeing record profits for this year over last year. So
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It's
it really has. But where it hurt us is on the CBD side of things. The retailers were not taking new products, right? So you know, we expected to roll out brands at mainstream retailers like Walmart and Target, but a lot of them tapped the brakes when the FDA didn't allow ingestibles before COVID, and then they weren't really adding new categories during the COVID. You know, they were providing cleaning solution and essentials, but they weren't adding new categories. That's now changing, Montel. So what we're hearing from the retail trade is they're open for business. They're adding new categories. They're looking for new ways to grow their revenue, and that's helping a lot. But last year that was quite difficult.
And just if you had to put on your crystal ball hat, I mean, how do you think cannabis is going to spark this economic recovery across the country after post-pandemic?
Well, it's clear that it's a huge job creator, that it's a huge tax generator. I mean, I just saw that the first quarter in Illinois, which has only been legal for a little over a year from an adult use standpoint, was bigger. The tax take for the first quarter was bigger than the entire alcohol taxes that were collected. So that's an indication of the kind of money that can come in to support these states. And obviously, if the federal government gets out of its own way, there's going to be a federal revenue stream as well. So I think it's jobs, it's direct jobs, and it's periphery jobs. Just building out. Think about building out New York and all the grows and the dispensaries and the different businesses that are going to be impacted by just setting up that whole system. And that's happening.
New York system is broader than any other state that exists right now, and next to maybe New Jersey. I mean, with the fact that New York, you can actually consume cannabis anywhere you can smoke a cigarette, meaning you can walk outside and smoke cannabis if you choose to, as long as you're not within, a certain distance of a school or near kids. You can't do it in a park where other people are sitting, but you can be on a street corner and you can't be arrested. You can have it in your pocket. You can't be arrested. So I think New York is going to definitely change the way some of the existing state laws around the country have functioned over the course of the last 4 or 5 years.
I would agree. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. And now, I mean, you think that the federal government is going to change its policy? We're going to go towards, I mean, right now, I hate this whole idea of decriminalization because that still says I'm a criminal, and I'm not a criminal because I use medication. But do you think that they're going to go the way of decriminalization? Or do you think they're going to go the way of legalization? I mean, you cannot deny the tax implications, and lots of states are now, gearing up to put this on the ballot. A couple more states are putting us on the ballot next go round, going from medical to recreational. What do you think the Fed's going to do? I mean, if you had a crystal ball this over the course of the next year, 2 years, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, look, I think it's going to be prohibition is going to be removed, but how it's going to be removed is the big question. So I'm not one that believes that you're going to have this wide open market where California and Oregon can ship cannabis all across the country. There's too much vested interest in these state systems where somebody invested a lot of money in Ohio to grow, and California could take it out in 2 seconds. So I think it's going to be a state by state system, but they're going to remove the federal prohibition. And if you think about how alcohol prohibition ended, there was consensus that it wasn't working, that everyone was drinking anyway. It created criminals out of normal citizens. So the general consensus was it's not working, but there was not a consensus on how to legalize it. So the great compromise, which the prohibition repeal, the 21st Amendment is sometimes referred to, was really that every state had the right to regulate alcohol within their borders. That's why you see such varying systems. In New York, you go to buy wine and spirits, you have to go to a liquor store. To buy beer, you can go to the grocery store. In California, I can go to Safeway and there's stacks of Grey Goose in the aisle with the chips. So in Pennsylvania, it's a state monopoly where the state runs it all. So I believe that that's probably a model that will exist. And in cannabis, you're going to see a very state-centric system because not every state's going to want the same things. but they'll get rid of the prohibition. We'll get rid of the Safe Banking Act, I think, is the most likely thing to get past the Senate, which would help a lot of businesses in it, and safety as well. There's so much cash that people are stuck with that it would open up banking, which would be really important for the safety of the workers, the safety of the businesses, and just keeping criminals out, right? It's an important piece.
And even, I think that Safe Banking Act would help even when it comes to hemp, because in a lot of cases, a lot of these banks are confused about the fact that hemp is legal.
100% confused. And we've had banks shut us down. I'm like, listen, we're doing 100% legal, federally legal hemp. And yet I'm paying extra fees for credit card processing, and I'm having to do all kinds of extra steps with banking. And I agree. So the Safe Banking Act would be a big game changer for the industry and for everyone involved in it.
Well, what businesses do you think would stand to gain the most from legalization?
To the degree it doesn't get completely, I think it's going to happen in steps, Montel. So for step one might be safe banking, might be a decriminalization component. And then at some point they're going to completely deschedule it and get it off so it's completely legal. Until that happens, a lot of the large Canadian companies can't really participate here in the US. But a lot of the US MSOs, the multi-state operators that are in these licensed states, are benefiting with this current system. So the longer it remains partially federally prohibited, the longer it's going to help the existing US operators get bigger and big scale. But once it goes completely legal, then you're going to see not only the Canadians, but I think mainstream consumer products companies, tobacco, alcohol, Nestle, you name it, all kinds of businesses will enter the space in different ways, and that will bring a lot of new capital into the space, but also it'll probably be a lot of acquisitions of the early stage investors. So, a lot of the people that are in it now and fighting through banking and all the other issues that we deal with, I assume will be beneficiaries when the big guys come in and a lot of institutional capital comes to play.
Are you fearful at all of what's going on the global scale, on the international scale? I mean, you've got, Colombia, Argentina, India, Spain, Africa, China, all jumping into the hemp space and the CBD space. Though, I mean, I would question anybody who was crazy enough to put some Chinese CBD in their body, but it's going to be there, and within the next year, there's already moves afoot that allow for importation of isolates of CBD from some of these countries. Do you fear that at all?
I mean, to some degree, but I think it's first of all, I think the big brands that are going to be the big global brands are probably going to originate in the U.S. And so, and that's true of not all brands, but it's true of a lot of brands, a lot of categories. A lot of the really big brands, start in here or maybe in Western Europe, but a lot of brands start here. So I think we have a big advantage over all those other places in terms of building sustainable brand businesses. And when it comes to the importation of, I look at them as ingredients. And, if the cost goes down on the ingredients and someone can grow very inexpensively in, say, Colombia, safely, inexpensively, tested, all the normal things that we want to see in any product, and it lowers the cost of the input, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Now, it might, if I'm a grower in a state, that's going to hurt me. But if I'm brands and I'm using these ingredients in my brands to deliver a health and wellness benefit to consumers, and it helps drive the cost of this plant down so that it becomes more available to people, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I kind of look at it as both. There's pros and cons to it. I also think that, again, there's going to be protectionism at the state level within the U.S., and then probably there'll be protectionism on an international level where the U.S. guys are not going to want cannabis coming in from other countries for a while. That might change at some point, but I think it's going to be pretty restricted for the foreseeable future. And if people don't lose perspective sometimes. I know you've been at this for a long time, but if you think about it, Prohibition ended in 1933. That's for alcohol. We're still fighting about the liquor laws today. We have, cases going to the Supreme Court on a regular basis, litigating states' rights versus federal, federal commerce, interstate commerce, and those battles are still happening. Literally, almost 90 years later. So anyone that thinks this is going to be settled law with one legalization bill and that everyone's going to get along and it's all going to work, it doesn't understand history and how these things work. There's going to be lots of battles and lots of different constituencies, which is how laws are made. And, there's generally compromise that creates a consensus that we can move forward. So you're going to see a lot of that over time. And, I think it's, it's a long game. This is not a quick in and out. It's not going to be an overnight success. It's going to take a long time to sort this out. But I think directionally, unbelievable momentum in the right direction.
What do you see taking vertical wellness public in the future?
I do. We almost got public in the fall of 19. We got very close to getting a reverse merger into a SPAC on NASDAQ at that time. But when I don't plant anything. My farmers planted 1,800 acres of hemp. When we planted it, that was estimated to be worth something like $300 to $400 million of CBD that would come off of that crop. By the time we harvested, when we were trying to go public, that was probably worth 30 to 50 million because of the pricing that had gotten compressed. So our deal didn't happen. So since then, the hemp industry has been in quite a bit of distress. 7 of the largest companies went bankrupt between August of 19 and February of 20 before COVID. And the capital markets have been a little bit restrictive for hemp. They've opened up again for cannabis today with the new administration and the momentum that's happening at the state level. And I see CBD and hemp coming back, but it's taken a little while. So yeah, that's a long answer to say, yes, we were going to get public. We didn't. These windows open and close in financial markets all the time. And we're working on several deals that would get us public sooner rather than later. So that's active on my list of high priority projects. And the reason is, it's not to be public to cash out. It's to have access to capital to build this business at the right way, to be able to do the medical studies we want to do, to invest in the brands, and to really scale the business up and to be able to make the acquisitions that we think are going to be necessary over time. So it's really a vehicle to enable us to scale at the level I want to scale, as more so than any other reason. That's why we're doing it.
When you talk about brands and brands you want to acquire, what do you look for when you select a brand to build out? What are you looking for?
Well, we divide up the uses of the plant into various categories. So when you think about it, everything from pet care to beauty products to health and wellness to pre-workout, post-workout to sleep. There's a lot of different uses and different form factors, from topicals to ingestibles like candies to beverages, which is, I think, are going to be a very large category. And so when you think about the different form factors and the different uses, the typical consumer is not going to give their pet some CBD chewy treats and then eat them themselves or put it on their injury. It really needs to be its own category. So that's why we have a bunch of brands that are focused on specific use cases, situations where using the plant in a certain way with certain other ingredients provides benefit. And a beauty line is not going to be the same as a pet line, as a sports line. So when we look at brands, we think about it that way. We think about focus. Putting the same brand into every category works if you're a store like Costco and you have a brand like Kirkland, your store brand, or GNC maybe with their vitamins. But most standalone brands don't slap their brand on every type of product, right? So I use the example of if Diageo owns Johnnie Walker Scotch, but when they came out with a vodka, they didn't put Johnnie Walker vodka. They acquired Ciroc or Kettle One or Smirnoff. So they create different brands for different categories within spirits. And that's really how we look at it. So for us, it's about traction. Do you have consumer demand? Is there someone or multiple people involved with a brand who have their own platform that can help attract consumers to it? What's the efficacy of the brand? How does it work? Is it effective? I mean, that's really, really important part of the functionality of these brands. And is it unique? And do we feel like it can be defended and will stand alone as a brand that can have a long life? So all those things go into it. And then it's always, for us, it's about the people, because usually brands are made by people and they usually come with people. And we want people who have aligned values, want to do good by doing well, right? We have to do well, we have to run a good business, but we also want to do good for people and for society. And we think that we have a good mix of that, but we only want people who are aligned with that mission.
Well, I love the fact that people like you are in this industry now thinking that way, because I think more and more the industry needs to do that. I can't thank you enough for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel today, sir. Anything else you want to add?
No, it's I've been a fan for many years, watching your career, and I'm so happy that you're such a great advocate for the industry, and I think you do great work, and please keep it up, and happy to help in any way we can help.
Anything you got going on, you always have a home back here. If you want to talk about it, I'll definitely get you on and make sure people get an opportunity to hear your thoughts and share your vision for the future. So thank you so much. If people want to find out more about you, where would they go?
Well, verticalwellness.com is our website. Our brands are sold at vwellshop.com. But if you come to our website, you can read all about us, and we're out there. So and more you'll see us in stores, in physical stores. As the year goes on, we'll have lots of more physical distribution going forward. So great to be here, and thanks so much.
Absolutely, sir. Well, look, you take care of yourself, stay well, love those family and your kids. I saw your sons, and I know that they're Eagle Scouts like you, right?
They are, and that was a lot harder to get them to be Eagle Scouts than it was to get myself to be an Eagle Scout.
Oh yeah, I know, but different times. Yeah. You stay well, sir. Take care of yourself, and make sure you tune into the next Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments.